So we're going to try to keep this at 10 minutes, maybe 15. Okay, what's the goal? This is part 2. We're trying to set up a basic rig because we want to achieve the effect that I showed in the prior video. Okay, I'm not going to waste your time by constructing a mesh. How would I say this? I expect that you have your own mesh, or if you don't know how to make a mesh, just find out how to do that and then get back with me. Okay, so we assume you have a mesh and I have a mesh. Okay, what I don't expect is for your mesh or for your rig, or rig is basically another word for armature, skeleton. All those words are all synonymous. I don't expect it to look like mine. That's the purpose of this tutorial. So we'll just say you have a mesh. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put us on the same playing field. So I'm going to get rid of this armature. So let me do that. And I'll try to talk you through it while I do it. But it's not really within the scope of this. But I mean, for us to have a level playing field, let me do that. So this is currently parented. So let me go ahead and clear all my parents. Right here, if you look under for this mesh here, I'm in the modifiers tab. You may not know this, but when you add an armature, it's a modifier. So, you know, there's a modifier with it. So I'm going to go ahead and kill this modifier. So I've taken that out. So now when I select this mesh right off the bat, everything's disconnected. So, all right, but there's a little more you have to do than that. So we get rid of the armature modifier, and then we want to check our vertex groups. Vertex groups are what allow you to do all the deformations. That's going to be in your object data properties right here. Go ahead and click that. You notice that I have 2 vertex groups that were created. I'm going to go ahead and delete those. Delete all groups. So now we have no vertex groups. We have a rig that's still here, but it's not associated. It's not parented to the mesh, so therefore it's pretty much not there. So we'll just go ahead and hide that. I didn't realize that. Oh, let me go ahead and unhide that. Last thing is the mesh has been parented to the armature. So to check that, you click on the mesh, the object. Object and mesh are 2 different things, and I don't want to get into that. We're just going to say mesh. Click on the mesh. You notice I'm in object mode, and I'm going to go over to what is this? Object properties, and you'll see under relations that it's still parented to that rig that I had, or the armature that I had. So let's kill that. All right, cool beans. Now it is not associated with it. And if you were able to rewind the video, you'll see that when I did that, when I disconnected that relationship, while it popped up, like it came out from under the water and popped up to the surface because the relationship had been broken. So now I can drag this out of the collection because it's no longer part of that collection. So let's hide that. All right, cool beans. So now let's get to the meat and potatoes, so to speak. So how do I achieve the effect of, you know, having the mesh rigged and all that jazz? Well, we need an armature. So we have a mesh, we need an armature. Okay, so let's do that. First thing you want to do when you add an armature, it's not a hard fast rule necessarily, but I suggest it. Make sure that your point of origin, which is this little orange dot, yellow dot, make sure it is at world origin. Let's say it's over here somewhere. Well, that's my point of origin, but let's say this little cursor is over here somewhere. Shift S and cursor to world origin. Make sure that your cursor is centered in the world. I think that's necessary. I think that's important for me to mention that. Okay, so in object mode, Shift A, we're going to add in an armature, single bone. You don't see anything. Well, if you pivot around, you can see a little bone there. Now, you may not have a mesh that looks like a book or a wallet that you can just pivot around and see it. So in that case, when it's selected, it's going to pop up here in your outliner, right? In your outliner, I suggest as soon as you add it, start organizing things. So first thing we're going to do, right click, new collection. You're going to name that. Name it something. So I'm going to name it something that what it's going to be. So we're going to call this, we can just name it Armature. Let me select this. We'll just call it Armature dot wallet. And we're going to call it, is that 2 L's? I think so. Dot wallet 2. Okay. So let's double click the armature and rename it. Same thing. Dot wallet 2. Yeah, that's good. Now, while we're still in object mode, we want to go ahead and go to, I think it's here under, what is this? Object properties. And we want to look at a couple of things. Let's collapse all this. Okay. So you want to look at visibility. Nope. You want to look at viewport display. Okay. So name, that's going to show you the name of the armature, but we don't really need that right now. We do need in front. See, now, regardless of how my viewport is, I'll be able to see the bone. And also, you can either leave it as textured or you can switch it to wire, which is a little bit less intrusive on the eyes, and you can see it. So I have a little bit of time left. I have about 3.5 minutes left, trying to keep this time frame. So the next thing we want to do is, let me mention this again. You notice that my bone is at the world origin. Just think, whatever mesh that you're dealing with, it has to be grounded in some shape or form. Even if it's in the air, can't think of an example right now that comes to mind, but something that's in the air, it still has a imaginary line that's shooting from it down on the z-axis to the world origin somewhere. So you just need to keep that in mind. You can get on the internet and expound on that for yourself, but I think that's important to mention, because when your rotations and everything else are just completely out of whack because you failed to do so, don't say I didn't warn you. All right, so let's tab into edit mode, and what are we going to do here? Well, we're going to quickly think. We should have done this beforehand, but we need to think about, what do we want this object to do? Well, in this case, it's a book/wallet. I want it to open up. So I don't think I'm going to use this particular bone to open it up. I think I need another bone to act like a hinge, right? So essentially what we want to do, and here's another tip. When you're moving bones around, for the most part, you want to be in an orthogonal view. Right now we're in perspective view. So we're going to go in an orthogonal view. So I'll look at it from the front, not a good view. Look at it from the side, it's much better. But let's get a peek so we can make sure we know which side's which. So this is the open side, this is the closed side. All right. So I know that I want this bone to be back over here, like to be the spine of it, basically. So I'm in edit mode. I'll just move that over. GY, move it over. Something like that. We'll line this up in the next video to adjust it very precisely. But look at this. When I moved this bone, my point of origin didn't move. So let's go back to object mode. And that's a good thing, because when I mess around with the armature, I don't want this point of origin to move. I want it to be at the world origin. So I don't want to harp on that too much, but lots of videos out there about this. Okay, so we have our bone where we want it. Let's go back to 3 here. Okay, 2 parts of your bone, just to let you know. You have a head and you have a tail. If I'm not mistaken, the point that I have selected is called the head, and the other point's the tail. All the rotation, all the movement emanates from the tail upward. So let me quickly show you that. If you control tab into pose mode here, we're in pose mode now. If I rotate this thing, you see it pivots and rotates off of that bottom. It won't rotate off the top unless you mess around with it with some different options, but default, it's going to rotate off the bottom. Okay, so we want to go back into edit mode. Might be a little easier this way. And we want to duplicate or bring in another bone so that we can get ready to open up this door. So we're going to need 2 bones for this. All right, so let's adjust this bone. Just going to pull it up so that it's about the size of this book. I'm going to call it a book. I know it's a wallet, but we're going to call it a book. All right, and this one here, I want to put it like here, but like this. That's how I want it. Okay? Now to do that accurately, let's do it well. If you're going to do it correctly. So select this bottom, which will be the tail, I think. I hope I'm not saying that backwards. But select the tail, Shift S, that'll bring up this whole pie menu. You want to do cursor to selected, and then your 3D cursor will snap to that area. What that does is allows you to designate with absolute precision how you want to pivot things, where you want to snap things. It's very, 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 very useful. Okay, so again, that's Shift S, cursor to selected. Now, we duplicate this thing, Shift D, right click. It doesn't cancel it, it just snaps it back into place, but you do have two bones now. Now, press the period button or whatever menu deal it is. I press the period button on the keyboard, not on the numpad, but on the keyboard, and bring up this pie menu. And you want to do 3D cursor, because this is the pivot. You're pivoting now. So what we basically did, we snapped the 3D cursor to the tail, and then we selected a pivot point. I can't remember where it is, but I'm sure you could type it in. Nope. I'm sorry. I'll maybe make a video on that, but it's not that hard. Sorry about that. I hate that I'm not able to explain that. But you're going to snap the 3D cursor to the tail and then change your pivot point to be on that 3D cursor. That's what we just did. Okay. Now, let's rotate this bone then. We're going to rotate it. Looks like negative 90 degrees so that it snaps down. You notice how it snapped, how it pivoted. It pivoted off of that 3D cursor. That's why we did that. All right. So we go to maybe the top view, and we can see that because it's a ginormous orthogonal bone, it's right in the middle. We want to put it in this door. So we're just going to move it over on the x-axis a little bit, something like that. So now you can see that if you zoom in closer there, you can see that we've got this bone set up to open up the door. We've got this bone basically as the spine of the book. Now, last but not least, we just want to maybe move this up a little bit so that it's just like that. So now we are good. Last but not least, I say last but not least, but this should be the last point. These two bones are separate right now. They need to work together like a unit. Well, the very first bone we created, it's basically your root bone. It's going to, let's go into pose mode real quick. This is the root bone. It does nothing right now. So basically, these are two independent bones. So let's change that. If you go into edit mode here, if you notice, these are the names of the bone. Armature Wallet 2, that's the actual armature that it's associated with, and this is bone 001. Okay, this one is bone. So they have no names. So let's name them. So F2, this one's going to be called root. I like to call it root. And then this one, what is it going to do? Well, it's going to be opening of the flap. So we're going to call it flap. So we have a root and a flap. That's what we named them, okay? Now, they're still independent bones. Let's make them work together. Well, that's called parenting, relationship. So you're going to select this. Okay, here's how this works. Child and parent. You select the child first, the one that you want to be controlled. Select them first, and then shift select the parent, the one that you want to do the controlling. So in this case, I don't want the flap to control the whole wallet. I just want the whole wallet to control the flap. Hopefully that comes out correctly. I want to be able to grab the whole wallet and move it, but if I want to open the flap, I can open the flap. So that's how that works. The child is given a toy, quote unquote, by the parent that they can play with. They can do whatever they want to with that toy, but they don't have control of everything. The parent has control. So let's show that. This is the child that I have selected. Shift select the parent. Control P to do your parent hotkey. You can do connected or you can do keep offset. Connected is going to snap the tail to the head like so. We don't want that. It'll work sometimes. I mean, it could definitely work, but no, I don't want that. So Control Z. What I want is to keep it offset. what it'll do is it'll create a relationship line. You'll still have a relationship. It'll still act as if they're connected because they are, but it stays in place. It's still in the door. You see that? And then when we switch over to pose mode, this right here is going to control the door. Once we parent it, we haven't parented it to the mesh. We're just hooking up the armature right now. And then this is going to control the whole bit. So that's what we want. Hopefully that wasn't terribly long-winded. I think we got what we want to have accomplished there. We got the armature set up, and that's what we wanted to do. We added the armature. We got it set up. And we'll move on to the next bit, which will be linking the mesh to the armature so that when we move the armature, the mesh will move. So, all right, so we'll do the next one next.